All right, Shabbos, say good morning, a good Chodesh. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nisan Haba Aleinu L'Tova, Said and Simehakin, to show the Hakaras HaTov to Hashem for all of his Nisim and Niflaos. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeem all of the hostages and bring complete Hatzlacha to Eretz Yisrael and to Am Yisrael. What a beautiful and magnificent sponsorship for Chodesh Nisan. Shreich say thank you so much. Our week of learning sponsors Paul and Kathy Pollack, in memory of Paul's father Shmuel ben Zechariah and great-grandmother Cyril Bas Dov. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today. The Daf Yomi Chevra wishing a Mazel Tov to Yoni Frager on his engagement to Liora Chaver. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Shmuel and Shira Artman sponsoring Daf Yomi today in honor of the big Mazel Tov to Yoni Frager. Mazel Tov, and Steve Golaskov in honor of Yoni Frager's half birthday and his engagement to Liora Chaver. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Rabbi Yoni, on behalf of the entire shir, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. What a way, Baruch Hashem, to begin the new month. What a schus to get engaged on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. What an incredible way, Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin. Don't ruin it, man. I got this. I got this going. I got this going. Okay, got it. Let me frame my narrative. Just let me do my thing. Let me do my thing. What a beautiful thing to celebrate one's engagement on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It should be a month filled with brachas, with Yeshua's Nisim and Niflaos, and in Meretz Hashem, you and the order should be zocheh to stand under the Chobah b'Sha'a Tova u'Mitzlachas and build a bayis in Eman b'Yisrael. Mazel Tov. Incredible. I will say that with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. A lot to do today. Okay, we are picking up, today's daf is Mem Aleph 41. And we are picking up in Meretz Hashem at the Mishnah on Mem Amud Beis 40b. The Mishnah says as follows: Hamafkid chavis itzel chavero, v'lo yechtalo bailim makom. So we'll say some really interesting cases over here. So what happens? I go ahead and I deposit a barrel. A barrel with my friend, with Ruvain, and Ruvain did not identify a place. In other words, he didn't identify a makom, right? He didn't go ahead and say, in other words, so we're going to see there are two different ways that essentially I could deposit something with Ruvain. So possibility one is I go ahead and I bring over a barrel to Ruvain, and Ruvain identifies, says, you know what, keep it in that corner over there. So that's not this case. In this case over here, I deposited a barrel with Ruvain and did not identify a specific spot in which to put that barrel. The total of an ishbara, so Ruvain was moving the barrel, and the barrel broke. So now the shaila is liability. Imitoch yado nishbara, if ultimately, again, while Ruvain was moving it, i.e. before it was returned back to its original place, the barrel broke. So again, I will say, litzarcho, if halacha l'maisa, the barrel was being moved for Ruvain's purposes, Ruvain was moving it around because Ruvain wanted it out of this place and wanted it somewhere else. Chayiv. Then Ruvain is chayiv. Litzarcha, however, if the barrel was being moved for its own benefit, in other words, if the barrel was being moved not because, again, some type of benefit to the barrel itself, then potter. Then Ruvain is going to be potter. So we'll say, so this is case number one. I'm depositing a barrel with Ruvain. Ruvain did not specify a place where the barrel is going to be kept during the duration of the custodianship. Now the barrel is being moved. If in the course of being moved, the barrel breaks, so does Ruvain have liability? And the answer is, it depends. If he's moving it just for his own purposes, then yes, he has liability. If, however, he was moving it for the benefit of the barrel, then he does not have liability. Case one. Case two, or I should say, still part of case one. However, I'll say, watch this. If Reuven moved the barrel, whether he moved the barrel for the barrel's purposes, ultimately for his purposes, but I will say, after moving it, he returned it back to its original location, then halacha l'maaseh is pater. Once he's returned it back to its original location that it was placed in, Reuven no longer has any liability. Okay, that's all part. We'll call all of that case one. Yichtu lo habaylim makom. So we'll say, what happens if, when I deposited the barrel with Ruvain, we agreed upon a spot that the barrel was going to be kept in, v'tiltala v'nishbara, and then Ruvain moved the barrel, and during the course of moving it, the barrel broke. Bein mitoch yado, bein mishenicha l'tzarcho, or bein mishenicha l'tzarcho, chayiv. So ultimately, I will say, in that case, then halacha l'maisa, whether ultimately, again, whether halacha l'maisa, Reuven moved the barrel for his own purposes, or even if he put it back in place, ultimately, again, he's going to be chayiv. Because we'll say this case is different. Why? Because in this case over here, we agreed upon a place that the barrel would be kept. Litzarcha, however, again, in this case, if the barrel is being moved for its own benefit, so to speak, to benefit the barrel, then ultimately potter. Good. So we'll say, these are our two cases in the Mishnah. So let's analyze. Says the Gemara, money. And I will say, whose opinion does this reflect? Now, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, money, diktani reisha, dimishenicha nishbera, afa pisha sarcho natla. So we'll say we're focusing specifically on, we'll call it part 2 of case 1. So case 1 is where I deposited a barrel with Ruvain. We did not set up a specific place where the barrel was going to be stored. So what's the halacha? Now Ruvain moved it. Now we'll say, here's what's interesting. So in the first part of the first part of case 1, so we're focusing on why did Ruvain move it? Did he move it for his benefit? Did he move it for the barrel's benefit? But then the Mishnah says a very interesting fact, which is, if Ruvain moves it, but then ultimately returns it back to its original place, if something happens to it afterwards, Ruvain is pater. So the Gemara says, whose opinion is that? Now look at Rashi. Hadik tani reisha, dimishenicha nishbara, afa pishel tzarchon natla, mitchila, pater damar meshech zira, hari hibershus bailim ki betchila, ve'eno ala ela kishomer chinam, upater alon sa, v'afa pishel hodia lebailim lomar nitaltia, ve'echserasiha, havya, Hashava. So I'll say, so listen to this. Essentially, what the Mishnah is saying is like this: that halacha l'maisa, I deposited the barrel with Ruvain. We did not set up an agreed upon place, right, where the barrel was going to be held. But nevertheless, Ruvain put it somewhere. Now Ruvain moves it. But what we're saying is, once Ruvain puts it back in that original location, he's once again restored to the status of a shomer chinam, an unpaid custodian. We're making that assumption over here, and therefore halacha l'maisa, he is pater on onsim. Right? Now, what's the chiddush in this? The chiddush in this is Ruvain has taken it and he put it back. And when he put it back, who didn't he inform? He didn't inform me. Yet, what do you see from here? Taking something and returning it, even if you didn't tell the owner that you returned it, essentially allows the item to still be quote unquote returned. So I will say, we actually, if you remember again, we had this in Baba Kama. We had this in Baba Kama. 2 days in a row with a Baba Kama reference. However, in the back, Yoni Frager was correct about his Baba Kama reference yesterday. I just want to put that out there. Right? So Lamaisa again. Now a second day reference to Baba Kama. We had this case. If you steal something, there's a mitzvah Hashavas Aveda. Does the owner have to know that you're returning the object or not? That was a machlokes. So watch this, Rabbi. So here we go. Here it is. Mani Rabbi Shmuel, Damar, Lo Ba'inan Das Bailim. Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion that halach l'maaseh, when you return something, you do not need the knowledge of the owner. In other words, the owner does not have to know that you are returning the object. The Sanya, here we go. Hagonif talamina eder, v'selamina kiss. So we'll say, if I go ahead and I steal literally a sheep from the flock, or I steal, $100 bill, a coin from the coin purse. So lamakom shaganav yachs. So Rabbi Shmuel said, the mitzvah Hashavas Aveda is return the object where you stole it from. That's it. What don't I need? I don't need das bailim. I don't need the owner to know that I'm returning the stolen object. I don't need him to know that I stole it. I don't need him to know that I'm returning it. My obligation is simply to return it to the place where I stole it from. Rabbi Kiva says, top of Memala 41a, tzarach das bailim. Rabbi Kiva says, no, not true. You need das bailim. The Rabbi say it's actually interesting because what it really represents is halach l'maisa. What is the din of hashavas hagzela, right? What is the din? So Rabbi Shmuel will say the din is put the object back where you stole it, right? Rabbi Akiva says no. It's part of it is there's an interpersonal obligation as well that the owner understand that now you stole it and now you're making him whole. So we'll say from the machlokes. Take a look at Rashi. Tap Rashi in the daf. Now we'll say according to Rabbi Akiva, what happens if you return an object and you don't tell the owner? So let's play this out. Right? I go over to Reuven's flock. I steal a sheep, and it's not my fault. It's Erev, right? It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. I'm getting very excited for Karban Pesach, right? So in my zeal for Karban Pesach, I end up stealing a sheep. So now what happens? I have my sheep, and then I realize I want to return it. Rabbi Shmuel says, no problem. Just go put it back in the pen. Now, I do want to point out, we're not getting into the technicalities of this, that even Rabbi Shmuel agrees, you obviously have to return it to a secure location, right? You can't just leave it on his doorstep. You have to return it to a secure location. So Rabbi Shmuel says, just return it to the secure location, Shalom Yisrael. Now I'm done. Rabbi Akiva says, no, you have to return it, and I have to inform Reuven. What happens if I don't inform Reuven? Let's say I just put it back in the pen and I don't inform Reuven. So Rabbi Akiva will say, I am chayiv for anything and everything that happens to that sheep, even extenuating circumstances. That's the halacha. So I'm chayiv for own sin. Okay, so therefore I will say, watch this. So now pause here for just a moment. So the Gemara is suggesting that our Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Shmuel. Because what does our Mishnah say? I deposited in a barrel with Reuven. Reuven went ahead, and we did not set up an agreed upon location. Reuven moves, but Reuven put it somewhere in his house, fine. Now Reuven moved it around. So we'll say, once Reuven puts it back in that original location, he's restored back to his Shomer Chinam status. Even though what? He didn't tell me about anything that was going on. This seems to reflect the view of Rabbi Shmuel, that Rabbi Shmuel says if you move something, you take something, as long as you return it back to the owner, even if the owner does not know, now you are no longer chayiv for ones liability. Beautiful. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, my area lo yachtu. So we'll say if that's the case, then why do you have to set up the Mishnah as talking about a situation where Reuven did not identify a specific spot in which the barrel was going to be kept? Afilu yachtunami. I was going to say, even if Reuven identified a spot where the barrel was going to be kept, once Reuven returns it back to that spot, so he is freed from any ones liability. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Lomi bai kamar. So we'll say, remember again, the stylistic approach of lomi bai means sometimes the Gemara will say something or the Mishnah will say something even though it did not need to be said. For example, lomi bai yachdo dimkomahi. So we'll say, it goes without saying that if Reuven and I agreed upon a spot where the barrel was going to be kept, Reuven took it from that spot and then returned it to that spot, it goes without saying that now Reuven does not have ones liability. I will say, even in a case where we did not agree upon a specific spot, the lav makomahu, because also when Reuven returns it to that original spot is not an area that we agreed upon, yet even with all of that, lo ba'inan das bailim, that is still considered to be a returning of the object, and therefore once Reuven puts it back in the original location in which the object was stored, the object is quote-unquote considered returned. You don't need knowledge of the owner, and therefore halacha l'maisa, Reuven is freed from any ones liability. Okay, beautiful. Amos Seifa. So we'll see. Look at the end of the Mishnah. Yachtu lo habaylim makom. If we agreed upon a space in which the object was going to be stored, so v'tiltala v'nishbara, and then Reuven moved the barrel, and the barrel broke. Bein mitoch yado, bein mishehinicha. Ultimately, again, whether it broke while Reuven was using it or moving it, or whether it broke even when Reuven put it back in its original location, right? You're chayiv. So the Gemara says, Litzarcha pater. So ultimately, again, if it was being moved for Reuven's own purposes, he's going to be chayiv. If it was being moved for the barrel purposes, it's pater. I will say, here's the problem. Asa'an Rabbi Akiva. That reflects the view of Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Ba'inan das Bailim. Rabbi Akiva holds that ultimately, again, when you return an object, you need the knowledge of the owner. So we'll say this is very strange. So now we have Asal Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Dinas Bas Bailim. Rabbi Akiva, now if it's Rabbi Akiva, my area yachdo, afilu lo yachdo nami. Now both say, according to Rabbi Akiva holds that when you return an object, it's only considered to be returned if the owner is knowledgeable of the return. But if it's Rabbi Akiva, then ultimately, again, what does it matter if you identified a location or didn't identify a location? Afilu lo yachdo. Even if there wasn't an agreed upon location, nami, so the Gemara says, nami, lo mi bai kamar. The Gemara says, you're right. Lo mi bai. Both say, again, the Mishnah is saying one thing, even though it didn't need to say it. Lo mi bai, lo yachdu, de lav makomahu. So it goes without saying that if you returned it, that if we did not agree upon a specific location to store the barrel, that halacha l'maisa again, the la makomahu, this is not his agreed upon location. Ela afilu yachto nami de makomahu ba'inan das bailim. Rather, it was according to Rabbi Akiva, so even in a situation where we agreed upon to keep the barrel in a specific place, you would have thought that because this is an agreed upon specified location, that when Reuven puts the barrel back there, it doesn't need das bailim because it's an agreed upon location. Kamash malan, that even in that case, it requires das bailim. So we'll say this leaves us with a very strange dynamic. Reish Rabbi Shmuel, the Sefer Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say, so then you're telling me over here that the beginning of the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Shmuel, and the Sefer reflects the view of Rabbi Akiva. As well say, so just kind of zoom out here for just a little bit. We have a fundamental machlokus between these two great personalities. When you take an object, now again I will say, this case is similar to the theft case. Why? Because remember again, in both of these cases, you're taking an object without permission. Because remember again, I will say, in a case where the barrel is being moved for the benefit of the barrel, everyone agrees that what? That if something happens to the barrel, what's the halacha? I'm potter. Everyone is agreeing with that since halacha l'maisa, it's being done for the benefit of the barrel. So the cases in question over here is where the barrel is being moved for my own purposes, which I will say to a certain degree, or I should say Reuven's own purposes, Reuven is the shomer, which I will say to a certain degree resembles a case of misappropriation, which resembles a case of theft. So remember again, the machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva is in a case of theft. I steal an object from Reuven. Now I want to return it. Is it enough to return the object to the property of Reuven, or do I have to inform Reuven that I'm returning it back to him? Rabbi Shmuel, just put the object back. Rabbi Akiva, you have to inform the owner. Or I should say the owner has to be knowledgeable. So I will say that when you look at our Mishnah, the Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah, which seems to indicate that all you need to do to be freed from owner's liability, all Reuven needs to do is put the object back. That's it, put it back in its original location. Even if Reuven doesn't, even if the owner doesn't know, that's Rabbi Shmuel. The Seifa seems to indicate that putting the object back by itself is not enough. It would seem that you'd have to inform the owner. Who is that? Rabbi Akiva. So you have one Rabbi say, we don't like this. In general, we don't like this. We don't like you when Mishnayos reflect two different opinions. In other words, we'll say, normally in life, we're fine with difference of opinions. But in Mishnayos, we like Mishnayos to be harmonious. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, Dan Rabbi Yochanan, man de metargem li chavis aliba de chatana. So let's listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan used to say, if there's anyone who could explain to me the Mishnah of Chavis, that's our Mishnah. If there's anyone who could make the Mishnah read well, according to the opinion of one Tana, Movalna mane basrela bemasusa. I will carry his clothing to the bathhouse. So I'll say, so apparently again, carrying someone else's clothing to the bathhouse was demonstrative of servitude. That's what you would generally have your servant do. So literally Rabbi Yochanan says, if there's anyone who could interpret the Mishnah and interpret it in a way that halacha l'maaseh aligns itself with one opinion, either Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel, I'll carry your soap, right? I'll carry your clothing, I'll carry your stuff to the bathhouse, which was a way of saying we've tried, and we cannot go ahead and make this Mishnah in alignment with one particular opinion. So we'll say, by the way, what a profound yesod as well. And I will say, sometimes. Right, we know that shalom, creating harmony is such a goal for Klal Yisrael. So I will say often what shalom means is trying to get people on the same page. But sometimes there's a different kind of shalom. And the other kind of shalom is learning to live with dispute. In other words, we'll say sometimes you can't reconcile the opinions. They're irreconcilable. They're too far apart. You can't reconcile them. Right? There's a Rabbi Shmuel, there's a Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Shmuel and Akiva are not going to agree. So ideally what we'd like to do is, at least in the Mishnah, get conformity of opinion. But when you can't get conformity of opinion, you have to learn ultimately, again, to live harmoniously with dispute. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron. To live harmoniously with dispute, but it's not, Rabbi Say. It's not. If there's one thing that Klal Yisrael could do, it's live with harmony, even with diversity of opinion. I will say that's what's happening. That's what's happening in a Mishnah like this. You could say, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, rewrite the Mishnah, just make it harmonious. No, Rabbi is teaching us a very important lesson of living harmoniously even with diversity of opinion. Incredible, incredible. So Tirgum Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba Kamei Derav, Shenat la Amenas la Gozla. So this is interesting. So we'll say, so now let's analyze this a little bit. So now remember again, I've deposited the barrel with Ruvain, right? So now the Mishnah says Ruvain took it. Why is Ruvain taking it? Why is he handling the barrel? So Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba says that Ruvain's taking it with the intention to steal it. With the intention to steal it. Okay, Tirgum Rav Nosson bar Abba Kamei Derav, Shenat la al minas l'shloach ba yad. So Nosson bar Abba says, no, Ruvain's not looking to steal it. Rather, what is Ruvain looking to do? He's looking to use it. L'shloach ba yad means use it. Now use it. Now again, obviously, using something without someone's permission is also theft. Right? Is also theft, right? So l'maisa again. But remember, whereas Legozla means Ruvain's intention is to just totally steal the item outright. Rav Nosson bar Abba says his intention is not to totally steal the entire item, but just to utilize some of it. So there's a machlokes as to what the intention of Ruvain is. This is very interesting. What are they arguing about? B'shlichus yad tzricha chisaron. So we'll say ultimately, we'll say, by the way, I'll just mention, just before I go on, we don't really have time, but I was trying to stay focused, because I felt very proud of myself for the recorded daf. I realized when there's no one to interact with, it's kind of just me alone in my office, just breaking for water in the middle of a shiur, right? There's really very little going on. We cover a lot of ground, so it's exciting to be here with all of you. So I get a little distracted in a good way. So I'll say, so just thinking about this idea of this concept of, do you need, so do you require, so Rabbi Kiva says, Sarach das bailim, in order to affect tshuva, that's really what's happening over here, right? It's machlokes in tshuva, right? Rabbi Shmuel says, in order to become a bal tshuva, all you need to do is put the object back where it is, right? Rabbi Akiva says, in order to be a bal tshuva, what do you have to do? Sarach das bailim. The owner has to be aware that you're giving the object back. So I was thinking about this, and it excited me very much, because Nisan is a tremendous month of tshuva, just like Adar and Sivan and Iyar and Tammuz and Av, right? And don't forget Cheshvan and Shvat, and right? So remember this incredible. Also, if you think about it, it's the yesodistic machlokes in how to become a bal tshuva. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it's enough to become a behavioral bal tshuva. In other words, you don't need das bailim. You don't need das. All you need to do is change your rhythms of behavior. Change what you do. Just change how you behave, right? So Rabbi Shmuel says, in order to become Bal Tshuva, just give the object back. You stole a sheep, give the sheep back. Once you give the sheep back, you're done. You're done. Rabbi Akiva says, no. In order to become a Bal Tshuva, das bailim. They both say, who's the bailim? Me. Well, you need HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu always has das, right? In this case, das bailim is me, the Bal Tshuva, the sinner, right? I need my das. It's not enough in life to affect behavioral tshuva. Tshuva has to, real tshuva is also a cognitive process. In real tshuva, I change the way I think. In real tshuva, I change the way that I feel. In real tshuva, I change everything about me, not just Rabbi say, isn't this incredible? So fundamental machlok is how to become a bal tshuva. Rabbi Shmuel says, change your behaviors. Rabbi say, I want to be clear. Rabbi Shmuel is not saying you shouldn't change the way that you think or change the way that you feel. But Rabbi Shmuel says, changing the way you think and changing the way you feel, that comes later on. Right? After you change your behaviors, changing your behaviors results in a change in the way you think and a change in the way you feel. But really, what real essence of tshuva is, change your behaviors. Rabbi Kiva says no. Tzarach das bailim. The Bal Tshuva, the bailim, also has to have a fundamental change in the way that he thinks, in the way that he feels, in the way that he experiences life as well. So I'll say, hold on to that, because that's going to be yesodistic machlokes in how we become Bal Tshuva over this incredible month of Nisan. Let's go back there. So I'll say, so now back to Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Nosson. So we'll say, here's the Shaila. Brothers, right? Brothers having a machlokas. Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Nosson, right? So brothers having a machlokas. So we'll say, so the Shaila over here is, what is Ruvain doing? When Ruvain moves the barrel, what is his intention? Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba says his intention is to steal it. Rabbi Nosson says his intention is l'shloach ba yad, to misappropriate. So we'll say, what are they arguing about? Because it kind of sounds like the same thing, right? Misappropriation is stealing. So what are they arguing about? Makimev, Yabos is very interesting. B'shlichos yad tzricha chisara. Okay, I will say, now watch this. I will say, if I go ahead and I grab something, I take something that's not mine, with the intention to use it, but I have not yet used it. I haven't diminished it. Is that called shlichos yad? So we'll say, I just want to point out something very interesting over here, right? Gezel, when you steal something, right? We'll say, what's the process of theft? I go over to Ruvain, I take a sheep, I take it into my property. That's it, it's done. A sheep is not a good example. I take his barrel of wine, and I take it, I'm taking the whole barrel. Shlichos yad, I will say, is, my intention is, I'm going to take a glass. I'm having a nice dinner. I don't need the whole barrel. I just need one glass. That's shlichos yad, misappropriation. Or better stated, I'm the shomer over that barrel. I don't plan on taking everything. I just plan on taking something. So we'll say, here's the shaila. Is one in violation of misappropriation before they take anything? Is that interesting? In other words, before I diminish, let's say, the wine in the barrel, but now I will say, so just let's play this out. I deposit, right? Let's go with Ruvain. Ruvain deposits his barrel with me, a barrel of wine with me. I pick up the barrel, and what's my intention? My intention is I'm going to take a glass of wine from here. Do I want to steal the entire barrel? Is that my intention? No. I just want to take one glass of wine, but I haven't yet taken the glass. Is it called shlichos yad? Is it called misappropriation when I'm moving the barrel with the intention to take something from it, but I have not yet diminished it? Isn't that fascinating? Look at Rashi. Rashi says over tzricha chisaron. Rashi says lo havi shlichos yad la'amida bershusa ela imkein chasra. So let's actually read this. I'm sorry. Here we go. So Mandamar goes lo. So the opinion is Rabbi Yaakov, who said that the case over is where I'm looking to steal Ruvain's barrel. Kasavar shlichos yad tzricha chisaron. So he holds it's only called misappropriation if you actively take something. In other words, if you haven't diminished the item, it's not misappropriated. So therefore, I'll say, interestingly enough, when I move Ruvain's barrel, sorry, I just switched it. When I move Ruvain's barrel, and my intention is to take a glass of wine, but I have not yet taken anything from Ruvain, ultimately, again, that's not called shlichos yad. Uman damar l'shloach bayad kasavar, and also for the second period, Rabbi Nosson, who says shlichos yad, he holds kasavar shlichos yad eino tzricha chisaron. He holds, I will say, no. What's misappropriation? The moment you go ahead and you move the barrel. And I will say, now obviously, I just want to point out something. Everyone agrees, I will say, that's what? Kavana to misappropriate is not misappropriation, right? Just to be clear, right? If Ruvain deposited his barrel with me, and I'm looking at that barrel, I'm like, ooh, I am going to have a glass of that, right? But I haven't done anything. Everyone agrees that that is not shlichos yad, right? So we'll say, but the shaila is, when I move the barrel with the intention to take a glass, but have not yet taken a glass, is that shlichos yad? So Rabbi said, this is the fundamental machlokes, Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba and Rabbi Nosson bar Abba. Maskef Rav Sheshes. So Rav Sheshes says, I don't understand. Midi not lakatani. So he's really asking on Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba. Rabbi Yaakov, how can you say that my intention over here is to steal the barrel? It doesn't say natla. So Rabbi say the lashon of natla means to take something, which could be a lashon of theft. Tiltala katani. Our Mishnah says tiltala. Rabbi say, what does tiltala mean? Move. Now, move, by the way, could just mean for very utilitarian purposes. What's the case over here? So I will say, what's the case here? I will say, Ruvain deposited a barrel of wine with me to watch it, and we'll say, what did I do? I moved the barrel in order to climb up on it, in order to get some pigeons. So I will say, so now, interestingly enough, look at Rashi. I moved the barrel to use it as a ladder. Lito gozlos mikan gava vafilu hachi havi gzela mekam b'shusei adavar hashav d'ksavar shol shlomidas bailam gazlanu. Both listen to this. V'kasavar shol shlomidas gazlan havi. The Mishnah reflects the view that when you borrow something without the knowledge of the owner, I'm a thief. So we'll say this is very interesting. So in this case over here, my intention is not to steal the barrel. That's not my intention. but I'm using it, I'm borrowing it without permission. What is the status of borrowing something without permission? I'm a gazlan. The Gemara says, V'kula Rabbi Shmuel, and therefore the entire Mishnah reflects the Rabbi Shmuel. The Seifa she'enicha b'makom she'ena mukuma. And the Seifa of the Mishnah you have to interpret is where I'm putting back the barrel in a place that is not its designated location. I've Rabbi Yochanan, hinicha b'makom mashma. Rabbi Yochanan will say the lashon of hinicha ultimately means that what? It's being placed back in its original location. Okay, so we'll say, so again, I just want to point out, we've kind of just stumbled upon, first of all, it's like a lot of stuff going on over here. But I will say, but again, this idea of shlichus yad, what happens if you move something with the intention to misappropriate it, but you have not utilized it? You haven't utilized it. Is that called shlichus yad or not? Misappropriation? That's our machlokes. Here we go. Itmar, Rav v'Levi, chad amar shlichus yad tzricha chisaron, v'chad amar shlichus yad eino tzricha chisaron. Machlokes. One says misappropriation is only misappropriation if you diminish the item. Other one says no. Misappropriation, I will say, even... Right? I'm sorry. Other said misappropriation is as soon as you move the object with the intention to misappropriate, that's shlichus yad. Even if what? You haven't actively diminished anything. So to stayim dirav udam shlichus yad ain't tzricha. So we'll say bepashtos it's Rav who says that misappropriation does not need diminution. That's the way to say it. Misappropriation does not need diminution of the object. The Sanya, here we go, we'll say roa shahaya roa edro. So we'll say if there was a shepherd who was shepherding its flock. Ve'enichu edro ubala ear. This is an interesting case here. Right? So we'll say, I'm shepherding the flock. And what happens? I go on break. And I come into the city. I'm a union shepherd, right? So I go ahead, right? So I got break, right? I'm on break, and what happens? And I come into the city, Bali ear, and we'll say, we'll discuss the parameters of this in just a little bit. Uba ze'ev v'taraf, uba ari v'daras. Now, while I'm gone, a wolf comes, right, and tears apart one of the sheep, or the lion comes and tramples upon one of the sheep. What's the halacha? Potter. Ultimately, I'm potter. I both say, now, why am I potter? Take a look. I will say 3 lines into the wide lines. Potter, the on sininhu, because we'll say this is an ones. And I will say again. Remember, even had I been there, right, I'm not giving my life for the sheep. So Rashi says, "V'imishum deniach edro pshia he mukmina la da'al be'idna da'ili inchi kidamin ba'sorchas hapolim inami deshama kol aryeh va'al." So Rashi points out to her, but 1 second, but I left. So actually, Rashi points out to her something very interesting. So we're going to see this later on. Apparently, even a shepherd, all kidding aside, it was normal for the shepherd to take a break. And I guess apparently you could leave the flock for a little bit of time. That's possibility 1. Or possibility 2, Rashi says that when I heard the lion roar, I ran, and I'm entitled to run. So the point over here is there's not a pshia, right? There's no negligence, and therefore halacha l'maisa I'm potter when one of the animals are killed. Okay, let's go back there. Hiniach maklo v'tarmilo ala chayiv. However, if I left my staff or my cloak, right, on one of the sheep, I am chayiv. So it says the Gemara, I don't understand. So I don't understand, because I put my staff or my cloak on one of the sheep, I'm going to be chayiv. Hashaklinu, but I ended up taking it back. Rashi says, now watch this. Rashi says, Hashaklinu v'i nami shlichos yad chashiva hadr adra kishe not lo hemeno va'anamak mina la'el stam mechar. So now watch this. Now, what would be wrong with placing my staff or my cloak on the sheep? I will say, what is that? That's shlichus yad. I'm utilizing the sheep in a way that I'm not permitted to do. That's misappropriation of an item that is entrusted with me. But the Gemara says, I don't understand. What's the big deal? I took it off the sheep. To which the Gemara says, what's the case? The case ultimately, again, is where my cloak is still on the sheep. I will say first wide line, but even if my cloak is on the sheep, who cares? So which the Gemara says, Halo mashcha, I never did mashicha. It's not like I ever took physical possession of the sheep. What's the case? The case is where I struck the sheep and the sheep ran. So we'll say, so remember again, this is a form of kinyan. I v'halo chasra. Rabbi say, but by putting my cloak on the sheep, I didn't do anything to diminish the sheep. So if there's nothing to diminish, ultimately again, why is that shlichos yad? So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that according to Rav, shlichos yad, misappropriation, does not require diminution. So Rabbi says, so this is really very interesting. So halacha l'maisa, what comes out from this is, so misappropriation does not require diminution. Therefore, according to Rav, once I put my cloak on the sheep, that is called shlichos yad, that is called diminution, and therefore halacha l'maisa, I will be chayiv ultimately for misappropriation. To which the Gemara says, Dekenami, so the Gemara says, Ema shechisha b'makel. Well, the truth is, you could be talking about a case where when I struck the sheep, I struck it so hard that it was injured, and therefore maybe it really was diminished. Dekenami diktani shechisha b'makel shmamina. Okay, so the Gemara just says, by the way, you could just set this up as a different case as well. Rabbi say, but the point over here is, for our purposes, what do you see? What do you see? That halacha l'maisa, Rav is of the opinion that that shlichos yad eina tzricha chisaron. That misappropriation does not require diminution. And from the fact that Rav holds that ultimately again shlichos yad requires chisaron, so the Gemara says Levi savar shlichos yad ein chisaron. Sorry, I mixed up the opinions. So my time with Levi. What's Levi's logic? Rabbi Yochanan Mishun Rabbi Yossi Ran Arai. The Gemara says Mishun shlichos yad. So we'll say, so now why is it? Why ultimately, again, does Levi hold that shlichos yad does not require chisaron? What's the logic there? Here we go. So both say it's quite fascinating. So Rabbi Yochanan Yossi ben Arai, mishuna shlichos yad ha'amura b'shomer sachar, mishlichos yad ha'amura b'shomer chinam. So both say, I want to point out something very interesting over here. The phrase of lishlach ba'yad, some form of shlichos yad, that phrase appears both by shomer chinam and shomer sachar. So the concept of misappropriation appears both by a paid custodian and an unpaid custodian. So watch this. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Arai, the shlichos yad mentioned by shomer sachar is different than the shlichos yad mentioned by shomer chinam. Amud beis, vani omer, but I say, eina mashuna. Ultimately, again, they're no different. Okay, so we'll say, what's going on over here? Here we go. My mishuna. So the Gemara says, what does it mean that they're different? Here we go. Lo tomar shlichos yad b'shomer sachar. Now we'll say, there's really no reason for the Torah to teach me about misappropriation or that misappropriation. So we'll say, so again, I just want to point out the distinction between shlichos yad and gezel. Right? Gezel is, my kavanah is just to totally steal the object and to make it mine. Shlichos yad is misappropriation, which is, I intend to use the object in an illegal way, but lav dafka, that I plan to go ahead and totally steal it for myself. I'm just going to use it. So watch this. So the Gemara says like this. The Torah did not need to say, Lo tomar shlichos yad b'shomer sachar, v'teisi mishomer chinam. The Torah did not need to discuss misappropriation by a shomer sachar, paid custodian, and I kind of learned it out from shomer chinam. How so? Here we go. Uma shomer chinam shapata b'gneva v'aveda. A shomer chinam will say, remember again, an unpaid custodian, the only thing an unpaid custodian is chayiv for is what? Pshia, negligence. So a shomer chinam who is pater if the object is lost or stolen, yet shalach ba yad chayiv. Yet if you misappropriate, you're chayiv. Shomer sachar shechayiv b'gneva v'aveda l'koshekin. And I say a shomer sachar who is chayiv for gneva v'aveda, certainly what? Should be chayiv for misappropriation. Right? So therefore, you don't have to say shlichos yad by shomer sachar, and I would have learned it out from shomer chinam. But the Torah does discuss shlichos yad. Ultimately, again, by a shomer sachar. So for what purpose? Lomar alecha shlichos yad ina tzricha chisaron. So Rabbi Yochanan says it comes to teaching that what? That shlichos yad. So again, the mention of shlichos yad by shomer sachar is superfluous, is unnecessary, because I could have learned it out from shomer chinam. So why does the Torah write misappropriation shlichos yad by shomer sachar if I don't need it? To teach me a unique halacha, which is that shlichos yad does not require chisaron. That ultimately, again, misappropriation does not require diminution. Okay, Vani Omer, but Rabbi Yochanan says, I hold, Vani Omer, Eina Meshuna. Ultimately, again, it's not unique. In other words, you needed to say it. Why? Rabbi Lazar, Da Amar, Da Vida Achasi. Rabbi Lazar says, Shomer, both Shlichus by Shomer Sachar and Shomer Chinam is one thing. So what does that mean? My Davida Achas. What does that mean, Abosai? Mishum the Ikal Mifrach. I'll tell you why, Abosai. Because the Gzeir Shava is not a good Gzeir Shava. Why not? Or it's not Gzeir Shava. Sorry, the Kavachomer is not a good Kavachomer between Shomer Sachar and Shomer Chinam. Why not? Listen to this. The Ikal Mifrach Mala Shomer Chinam Shekei Mishalim Tashlume Kefel Betoin Tainas Ganov. So Abosai, listen to this. What's the following halakha? Abosai, so imagine the following scenario. If a Shomer Chinam, we had this, if you remember again, right? Shomer Chinam, right? I deposited an object with Ruvain. Ruvain claims that the object was stolen. And then it turns out that what happened, Abosai? What happened? Ruvain stole it. Ruvain stole it. So what's the halacha? What's the halacha? Ruvain, the Shomer, has to pay kefel. Has to pay kefel. Now, Abosai, now listen to this. Now, a Shomer Sachar, who ultimately says the object was stolen, but ultimately, again, turns out that he stole it, doesn't pay kefel. So again, so the Gemara says over here, really the kal v'chomer between Shomer Sachar and Shomer Chinam doesn't really work, right? We wanted to say that a Shomer Sachar, who halacha l'maisa again is chayiv for geneva v'aveda. Sorry, a shomer chinam who's not chayiv for geneva v'aveda is chayiv for misappropriation. So certainly, then again, a shomer sachar who is chayiv for geneva v'aveda will certainly be chayiv for misappropriation. The Gemara says the kal v'chomer is not a very good one. Why not? Because halacha l'maisa, a shomer chinam has another unique chumrah. What's its unique chumrah? That if the shomer chinam lies about the object being stolen, halacha l'maisa, he is going to have to pay kefel. That doesn't apply to a shomer sachar. To which the Gemara says, Uman delo parich, the opinion who doesn't bring this as a pircha, he'll say, Karna below shvua, adifa mikfela b'shvua. So Rabbi say the shomer sachar's obligation to pay keren, to pay principal with a shvua, is even more chamer than ultimately, again, the obligation to pay kefel with a shvua. Okay, if you look at the first wide line in Rashi explained this a little bit, and Rashi says over here, Karna below shvua, adifa mikfela b'shvua, chamer shomer sachar shechai bekeren, ad shelo nishpal l'sheker. So Rabbi say, remember again, a shomer sachar is going to be chayiv to pay keren even without a shvua. The shomer chinam only becomes chayiv to pay kefal when? If he swore falsely. So both say this still represents a chumrah that shomer sachar has over shomer chinam, because the obligation to pay keren without a shvua is more chamer than the obligation to pay kefal with a shvua. Okay, Rava says, Lo tomrei shlichos yad lo b'shomer chinav v'lo b'shomer sachar v'tisi mishoel. So Rabbi says, great. Rabbi says, I just want to point out, the concept of misappropriation is mentioned really in three places: shomer chinam, shomer sachar, and shoel. Rava says, don't talk about misappropriation by shomer sachar and shomer chinam, and I would have learned it out from shoel. And I would say as follows: Mas shoel diladas bailim ka'avid. So Rava says shoel ultimately, and Rava say, now remember, when a shoel uses an object, Rava say, it's hard to kind of come up with the case of misappropriation by shoel. Why? Because the shoel has a right of usage. So I will say, so where is there misappropriation by the shoel? It's a din in his kavana. If when using the object, he has in mind ultimately, again, to go ahead and keep it for himself, that's a misappropriation. So here we go. Umashol deladas bailim ka'avid shalach bayad chayiv. So we'll say for shoel, who is using the object with the rishus of the owner, yet when he misappropriates it, he's chayiv. Shomer chinam v'shomer sachar lo kol shekin. So we'll say all the more so shomer chinam shomer sachar, who don't have a right to use the object, certainly they're chayiv in shlichos yad. We'll say that's a pretty solid kavachomer. To which the Gemara says lama ne'amar. So therefore, why does it say misappropriation by shomer sachar, by shomer chinam, if you could just learn it out by shoel? To which the Gemara says, Lama Ne'amar, so Chad Alom Relacha, Shlichos Yad Ein Tzricha Chisaron Kis, Ve'idach shelo tomar dayo lavo lios min adin kiniyos. Rabbi say, so one mention of shlichos yad will come to teach me ultimately the concept of what? The concept that misappropriation does not require diminution. And the other mention of it comes to teach me Ve'idach dayo lavo min adin lios kinidon. That ultimately I will say dayo. Dayo means I will say that there's a cap and a kavachomer. Mash shoel bebailin pater. Af shomer chinam v'shomer sachar bebailin pater. So I will say, because you might have thought just like shoel. Remember again, I will say the one patur that shoel has is ba'al avimo. If something happens to the object when the owner is there, the shoel is pater. So you would have thought that based on the kavachomer, ultimately the same halacha should apply to shomer sachar, shomer chinam. Kamash molan that it does not. All right, well, so you know what? We're going to stop. I don't want to rush. Luman domer. Okay, I'll rush. Luman domer. We'll say no, we're not going to rush. So we'll stop over here for today. So again, so I just want to point out, we're ending off in the middle of the, not in the middle, but towards the end of the machlokes. Ultimately, again, does shlichos yad require chisaron or not? Does misappropriation require diminution? This is our fundamental machlokes, and this machlokes, Rabbi say, really spans the entirety as to how you dash in all of these psukim. So the conclusion of the Gemara, and ultimately halacha l'maisa. I promise first thing tomorrow morning. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone. A good Chodesh. Let's learn with all of you.